66% of workers feel burnt out according to Forbes. Trust me, I was one of them. And depending on who you ask, that percent seems a lot higher. Before COVID hit, I knew I wanted to leave the US, but I needed to plan effective and efficiently. A lot of people always ask me, how do you go about income? How did you move abroad correctly? If you want to know, stay tuned from start to finish. I'll explain each process so that way you don't feel like you're gambling everything in your life. You have a career, you feel burnt out, you're making good money, but you're like, this can't be life. You see the world around you in your country that you love is just crashing and burning just like that. And you want your way out, but you just don't know how to go about it. Let's start with the facts first. Before you even consider anything, I don't want you just to jump to the conclusion, oh, it's so expensive to move, everything's expensive. But did you look? Yes, it's going to take some money to move abroad. That's a given. How much exactly? That's gonna depend on you. Because the number one thing you should do is research housing. Understand what you have access to, especially if you don't have a residency in that particular country, or would you need somebody to sponsor you if you want a long term? Or if you're trying to buy, can you buy it with cash? Would they allow you to get a loan like they would in the US? Which is usually a lot more difficult in most countries, especially if you're not a resident. But like I said, this is case by case based upon the country. Housing is a given. Some people, if they're unsure, they start off on Airbnb route. Keep in mind, you will be paying a little bit more than the locals will be if that's what you're doing. That should be a short-term plan and not long-term, unless you're just gonna be bouncing around from country to country. That works perfectly. If you're somebody that wants to be long-term, now you wanna look into healthcare. Hey, do I need to get an insurance plan? If I do pay out of pocket, does it make more sense than actually paying monthly for an insurance? That's gonna depend on you and your situation and your health. Then you wanna look into the visa requirements. We're gonna go more into detail about that a little bit later, but check out one of my previous videos where I talked about visas and documents that you need, especially as a US citizen, before you even leave to make your life a lot easier. And then for some people who have families, they're concerned about safety, of course, everybody is. Schooling. You wanna do your research. And it starts off with people who actually do this daily. I wouldn't live on these Facebook groups. Speak to reliable sources, people who actually live this, and not somebody who's just traveling around and saying, these are the best countries to move to. And they're just regurgitating stuff that they're not actually doing. And they could be giving you outdated information, because trust me, I've seen it already on a daily. For example, somebody was talking about Paraguay, what you need to get residency, and they said, oh, you have the $5,000 program where you just deposit that. And that's not a thing anymore. They stopped that program 2-3 years ago, but they're telling you that's all you need to do. You see how misinformation spreads quickly just like that? Because they look like they're a traveler. Traveling and living long-term are two different experiences. I always tell people it's obvious. You wanna have 6 to 12 months saved up. Even more, then you wanna understand currency. How does it work? What $1 will give you in this country? How often does it shift? Would that impact your living situation? If the dollar drops 5% or 10% in a year like it did recently from year to date for the US, would you still be impacted? Those are things to think about. How am I going to switch to another currency if I need to? Will my bank account allow me? Get that going in your head. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but if you're unsure of how to go about things and you don't have any money saved up, please do not move anywhere, because you'll be right back at home. Figure out how you're going to make money before you even leave. And you could even start building that up while you're in your home country, especially remote, so that way you're not stuck in one particular location unless you're trying to work in that country you're trying to move to. So keep a remote job if you have one, or find one if you don't, that allows you to work in that country you plan to move to. Or if you have a remote role and they don't allow you to, then you have to look for another job at some point in time. And if you're unsure how to find remote roles, I have some things pinned to the description for you guys to look into, but a lot of you already have the skills already. You're just scared to pivot. That's all it is. Because some of you can even freelance and still get consistent income like a 9-to-5 by getting these contracts. Yes, I know you see a lot of things on social media like layoffs, they're not hiring anymore. That is true, but companies are still making money. And you don't think that you can use your skills to build your own freelance and make your own income, work remotely, and not be worried about, I can't move here because my job won't allow me. I'm not telling people not to work a job. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just speaking for those who are thinking that way. And you could test your theory out while you are at home, while you have your safety net of a job in the US, to see what works and what doesn't. think outside the box a little bit. If you need help, I have another video pinned up here for you to watch. Now that you have those things figured out, let's look into residency. Check official government sites for the residency rules. And keep in mind, even then sometimes, for some countries, it's not always up to date. I'm gonna be honest. I know it's a little annoying. That's why it's crucial to have somebody that either has done this before and they actually do it on a day-to-day basis, or they work with people like myself who deal with immigration, attorneys, and in all different types of countries to make sure that you get the right information. Don't just rely on some TikTok or somebody who travels and they have no residency anywhere besides the US and they're telling you how to do so when they've never done it themselves. Imagine me trying to teach you how to become an attorney and I'm not one myself. But what do I know? Please do yourself a favor. Don't rely on these Facebook groups or random advice because it's usually outdated or wrong. I did this and it worked for me, but they did it 2 years ago and the rules changed. If you're curious on how to find the correct countries, the right individuals to speak to, subscribe to my free newsletter, guys. That's going to be for you. It's going to be pinned to this video as well in the description because I want you guys to have the accurate information. And the first 300 people who sign up is going to be free because I want to add as much value in a safe place where you get accurate information. The main things you want to focus on when it comes to the residency piece is temporary. If you want to do permanent, what does that look like? And then later on, maybe for citizenship after you hold your visas for a certain amount of time. Every country has different rules and I'll go over that in my newsletter. Now, we're gonna talk about the banking piece. Keep your US bank accounts active while you can. Talk about how to prepare yourself before you leave your bank accounts so that way you're not stuck in a foreign country with no access to money because your bank locked you out. Make sure you understand your ATM limits. You have cards that maybe are no fee for international. And think about bank accounts that allow you to hold multiple currencies, or at least in the country where you plan to move full time, if that's the case. And talk to tax professionals who understand how this works. I can get you connected to them if you need an actual tax professional that understands how to work with expats. That's the key. Don't just close those bank accounts yet just because you may plan to leave. Hold them because you're going to need them. One thing I don't see people talk enough about when it comes to this is a lifestyle shift. That's one thing I always kept in mind about, hey, when I move, there's gonna be some changes, especially compared to the US, what I'm used to. Doesn't mean that countries are not just as efficient, just as nice. I know, especially US, we're taught to think that, oh, if it's not the US, man, they're a struggling country, when it's not the case. You can still get access to the things that you want and that you like, but you have to keep in mind about the cultural shifts, the cultural norms, being in somebody else's country and at least attempting to learn the language and not expecting people to cater to you just because you're a US citizen and you have a blue passport. A lot of people don't care about that. They want to know if you're a genuinely good person, are you going to accept their cultures and not just take and not at least try? Just like when we tell people when they go to the US, learn to speak our language. Even though you may not say that, some countries will look at you that way too. So expect your consumer habits to change. For some, that's a good thing. You might be spending less and still getting a good quality. And you want to build a local network. That's key. I tell you guys, if I didn't have a local network in the countries I travel to or live, it would be very difficult. I would be paying a lot more for things than I need to. I wouldn't have a good source if things hit the fan. I need to figure out, oh man, how do I get access to this? Or how much should I be paying for this service? You'll be surprised what you need until you need it. That's why it's very good to build a local connection. People who actually live there, they understand how it works. Maybe if they speak both languages, because once they know you don't live there, oh man, that's the way it is sometimes. Be ready though for slower systems and extra paperwork, especially when you're doing your residency. Have patience. There's gonna be a time when you move to whatever country you're going to and you need to do something that may seem so simple, like opening up a bank account or making extra copies of some type of certificate, and you realize, oh man, I had to go through hoops for this one. That's where the local connection comes in. It could be annoying, but once you figure it out the first time, anything that comes your way, you'd be like, man, I could handle this. These are the things that I kept in mind when I was working in the US right? Knew I wanted to leave. I looked into the housing, the healthcare, residency, my documents, what I would need, how much things cost. So that way I had money aside for what that would cost. So I wouldn't be technically touching my savings. And of course my income piece, where I was working a remote job and I still did things on the side. I've always been doing that my whole life. And even if you're making more than your actual job, and whatever you decide to do, if you do something on the side, keep them both for as long as you can, as long as not impacting your mental, so you have money saved up. 6 to 12 months bare minimum, a year or two to be safe and for sure, even if you have to pivot, or if you want to try something new and take risks. That's why I say the 1 to 2 years. But if you guys felt like I left something behind or something else you want to know, add it in the comments below, and also subscribe to my newsletter. That's where I'm going to be dropping all the details strictly for you all who want the accurate information, know how to go about things, and I go into way more detail as well. I try to in these videos, but there's only so much I can do to keep people in my videos. But anyway, subscribe to the channel if you like this video and share it with somebody who needs it. In the meantime, we'll talk soon.